Red Bull and Max Verstappen dominated the 2023 Formula 1 season. Red Bull was able to clinch 21 victories out of the 22 races, while Max Verstappen was able to win 19 of the 22 races. Now, in the eyes of Lewis Hamilton and even in the eyes of George Russell as well, the Red Bull is arguably the most dominant car ever in the history of the sport. Now, this video is specifically for that. What we are going to do in this video is we're going to look at statistics, we're going to look at facts, and then we are going to set up a criteria to ultimately judge whether what both Lewis Hamilton and George Russell have claimed is actually true or not. Hence, when it comes to this video, the key topic of discussion is whether Red Bull is the most dominant car in the modern era. Now, when I talk about the modern era, I'm specifically talking about the 21st century. Now, I'm not going beyond that because, well, obviously there were dominant cars in 1992-93, the Williams, the McLarens of 88, 89 and 90, they were very dominant as well. But we are not going beyond the 21st century, just to keep things simple. So when we talk about the 21st century, there are 4 different dominant eras that we've already had. The first was the dominant Ferrari era from 2000 till 2004. Then we had the dominant Red Bull era from 2010 till 2013. Then we had the Mercedes dominant era from 2014 till 2020. And now currently we are in the 4th dominant era of this century, with Red Bull dominating from 2022 till 2023. Now, when we're talking about these dominant eras, there has to be a way to evaluate which cars were arguably more dominant. Now, to do that, the methodology that I'm going to follow and the criteria that I've set up is we'll take a look at the most dominant seasons for Mercedes, for Ferrari, for Red Bull, and so on. And in these dominant seasons, what we'll do is we'll try to bifurcate the races into the following categories. Now, we'll take a look at the number of races that the team has won and hence the race win percentage. We'll also take a look at the races that the team lost and try to categorize them in 3 different categories. Now, these 3 categories can be, well, the first is, well, the car is just not good enough to win in that particular race. Second is, well, either the driver had an off day, the team did not have the best of days in terms of operational issues, or maybe some other strategic issues. And the third is, well, just the reliability issue that the team encountered. Now, when you look at these criteria, there are arguably 2 to 3 metrics that I will ultimately narrow it down to. And the most important category, in my view, has to be the percentage of races that the car should have won. That is the ultimate potential of a particular car. So ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to bifurcate these seasons on the basis of these criteria and then make the judgment. Now, moving on, before we proceed, please hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Please hit the like button and even drop a comment. All of these help in making these videos reach out to more people. Thanks for doing that. Now let's proceed. Now, when we talk about the dominant eras and the years in which the teams were the most dominant, for Ferrari there are 2 years that stand out, the year in 2002 and the one in 2004. For Mercedes, there are 3 years that particularly stand out compared to the others. The 2014, 2015 and 2016 season were the ones where Mercedes was arguably the most dominant compared to the rest of the seasons. When we talk about the Red Bull, however, the 2023 F1 season stands out, and there is no other season in Red Bull's history that comes close to it. So when we talk about Red Bull, we will be taking a look at only the 2023 F1 season. Now, when we talk about Ferrari's dominant era, first of all, talking about 2002, Ferrari lost 2 races that season, and both of the races were lost because the car was just not good enough to win that day. The team won 15 of the 17 races. It had the win percentage of 0.88. When we talk about pole positions, Ferrari tended to lag a bit and the pole percentage was only 0.59. Now, when we talk about the 2004 season, Ferrari lost 3 races and all 3 of them were the races where the car was just not good enough to win on that particular day. Now, when we talk about the win percentage, Ferrari had a win percentage of 0.83 and the team secured 0.67% poles throughout the season. Now, let's take a look at the statistic that I will be keeping a keen eye on pretty much throughout this video, and that statistic is the percentage of races that the car should have won. Now, when we talk about the 2002 F1 season, Ferrari should have won 88% of races, and it did. And in 2004 F1 season, Ferrari should have won 83% of the races, and it ended up doing that. Now, with that out of the way, let's take a look at how Mercedes fared in its dominant era. Now, when we talk about Mercedes, the 3 years that stand out are 14, 15 and 16. Now, in 2014, Mercedes lost 3 races, and these 3 races were lost. Well, 2 of them were lost because of a driver incident or a driver not performing up to the mark. Now, the driver incident was in Spa, and the drivers not performing up to the mark, it was in the wet race in Hungary. Finally, the one race that the team lost out due to reliability was in Canada. The team won 16 of the 19 races. It had a win percentage of 84%. Then we talk about the pole percentage. The team dropped only one pole position in Austria to Felipe Massa and had a pole percentage of 95%. Now talking about the 2015 season, Mercedes once again lost out in 3 races. Now out of these 3 races, there was one race where the car was just not good enough, and that was the race in Singapore where Ferrari dominated. Other than that, the 2 races that Mercedes lost were in Malaysia and in Hungary. And both of the races you could arguably say that Mercedes did not perform up to the mark. If the team had not gambled early on a tire stop in Malaysia, there is an argument to be made that maybe Mercedes could have even won that race. And that was something that even the team touched on after the race. And similarly, the race in Hungary, well, it was a complete menace because both drivers had a few contact here and there and they had a poor race overall. Now, when we talk about the win percentage and pole percentage, it's somewhat similar to what the team had in 2014. The team won 84% of the races and the team was on pole position for 95% of the races. Finally, when we talk about the 2016 F1 season, it was the most successful season for Mercedes. The team lost 2 races. One of them was lost because, well, both drivers collided in Barcelona. The second race was lost in Malaysia because, well, Lewis suffered from a reliability issue. In terms of win percentage and pole percentage, Mercedes had a win percent of 90% and the pole percent of 95%. Now, once we've taken a look at all these statistics, there's one key statistic that I've highlighted, and that is the one we need to keep a keen eye on, and that is the percentage of races that the car should have won. Overall, if we take a look at this, in 2014, Mercedes should have won 100% of the races. In 2015, Mercedes should have won 95% of the races, and in 2016, Mercedes should have won 100% of the races. Now, let's move to Red Bull. Now, when we talk about Red Bull, it's somewhat simpler to take a look at how the team fared. When we talk about Red Bull, the team lost out in only one race, and that was in Singapore because, well, the setup and the bumps just did not sync well, and the car was not in the working window. Ultimately, if we take a look at the pole percentage and the win percentage, Red Bull was arguably not the best qualifying car, and hence you can see that it has roughly 64% pole position. When we talk about the win percentage, Red Bull has 95% win percentage. However, now let's take a look at the most important and the key statistic, the percentage of races that Red Bull should have won. And Red Bull should have won 95% of races this season. With this, we've taken a look at all the 3 top teams and their dominant seasons. Now let's do one thing, let's just put them together, let's compare how the 3 teams' dominant seasons fare, and ultimately that would give us a clearer picture. Now here we have a much clearer picture, and I think this should answer the question that we've been asking in this video. And the question is whether Red Bull had the most dominant car ever. Now if we take a look at these figures, there are a few things that become clear. And for me, I think if we have to talk about the car, we have to take a look at the bottom row. And the bottom row is percentage races that the car should have won. Because if we are talking about the car, we have to look at its ultimate potential. When we talk about Ferrari, the most dominant car that Ferrari produced should have won 88% of the races. For Mercedes, the most dominant car that the team produced, it should have won 100% of the races in 2014 and 2016. Then we come to Red Bull, and the car was capable of winning 95% of the races. Now this is ultimately where the problem comes up, because ultimately what a fan or a casual viewer does is that it takes a look at the win percentage. It takes a look at the fact that Red Bull has won 95% of the races. Now the fact that Red Bull has won 95% of the races, it is an achievement. But what it also shows is that Red Bull was able to match its potential. Mercedes not winning 100% of the races is not because the car was not capable of winning. It's because either there was a reliability issue or some operational issue. And when that happens, you can claim that Red Bull was arguably the most dominant team in the history of the sport. Red Bull in 2023 was arguably the most dominant team in the history of the sport. But was RB19 the most dominant car in history? Probably not. And this is the key difference that tends to get missed. The Mercedes of 2014 or of 2016 are arguably the most dominant cars in the history of the sport. And that accolade should be bestowed on that particular team, not on Red Bull. Red Bull is arguably the more operationally efficient team as compared to Mercedes in its heydays. But was the RB19 the most dominant car in the history of the sport? Probably not. It wasn't. So these were my views on whether Red Bull was the most dominant car in the history of the sport. Now do let me know what you think. If you like the video, please subscribe if you're new. Do drop a comment, hit the like button. Thanks for watching and see you next time.